writers. It's Nancy Smay, and you are listening to BS with Writers. Today, I have an awesome episode for you coming with Julia Jarrett, who is started as a client and I think now is a friend. I knew of her in the romance community, but we had never, I don't know if we had ever crossed paths, but she was referred for some coaching, and so we've been chatting a lot, and I asked if she'd be willing to come chat, and she said yes. So I've got that waiting for you. She has some fantastic advice and tips. So that's coming up in the episode. In personal news, you guys know that I published a cozy, I almost said romance, a cozy mystery under the name Nancy Stewart. And it came out August 15th, so about 2 weeks ago. And it's been really interesting because my previous launches up until this point have all been Delancey Stewart books for the most part. I've had a couple random pen names here and there, but we're not going to talk about those. But so it was very hard to kind of cage my brain around realistic expectations for a brand new genre, a brand new name, a brand new series. Because it's been a long time. I mean, you can see the books back there if you're watching this in video. My romances are all in series, and I have a big reader group, and have not achieved the level of breakout success I would love to say I had. But all the same, I have a following, and so a launch is somewhat predictable for a Delancey book. There are good launches and bad launches, of course, but this was a complete unknown because literally I was starting over with a lot more information and knowledge than I had when I started Delancey in 2013. But all the same, it was brand new. So I worked really hard, not so much on the launch, but on my own expectations, because a brand new name, a brand new series, and a genre where nobody knows me at all, was ripe for disappointment if I decided that this needed to be a gigantic launch and it needed to get up into the 500s in ranking in the Kindle store. And, if I had given myself those types of arbitrary benchmarks, I would certainly have been very, very disappointed. As it was hard. Launch days are always hard for me, I think, because I have a lot of activator and achiever. And those are like, I want to do things. And when I feel like something is out of my control, like I can't do things that will affect it anymore, it's super frustrating. So once I've pushed all the buttons and the book is live and there's nothing for me to do except, post a couple times and sit back and wait, it's really, really uncomfortable for me. So I hate those days. That said, I did have a small ARC team. I think I had about 35 ARC readers. I did book a blog tour, which is something I haven't done in a really long time for Delancey. But from everything I could gather in the cozy space, there was one provider called Dolly Cass, DOLLYCAS, that it does really awesome book tours and gets reviews and features and promos. And so I did a 2-week kind of just promo tour, and that was fun and got me a little bit of visibility and some extra reviews. I did put the book up on NetGalley through a co-op, so got some reviews that way, got some early reviews that I could put even, in the Amazon listing, which was great. And at this point, it's not sitting at a fantastic ranking. I would certainly love for it to be much higher. I did run a Facebook ad to the book, but I had to kind of talk myself off that ledge. For one thing, it's an election year and ads are getting more and more expensive. For another thing, I have always subscribed to the theory that there's not a lot of point of running a big budget Facebook ad to a first book in series if there are no other books in the series, because the way you get paid back from those ads is in read through, and there's nowhere to go from book one until you've got a whole series. So I really had to restrain myself from overspending in that way just to see artificial rank inflation to make me feel better. Something that I think we all fall victim to now and then. I did set up some Amazon ads just to give it some visibility when people are searching for cozy mystery. So I think that those helped. I am not the best at analyzing data on the back end of Amazon ads. So we'll see how those are going. That's actually one thing I'm really looking forward to at the NINC conference this year. I'm going for the first time in September, and I really want to dig into Amazon ads. Since I have pushed all of my backlist back into KU, I feel like that is something that would be really helpful to maximize visibility on the platform where all of my digital books are. So I'll let you know how that goes. Then let's see. In terms of book 2 in the series, so that I will have somewhere for readers to go, that is almost done. It's going to come out October 24th, so I do have a pre-order up for it. That one's called Bumped Off at the Bake Sale. So I'm excited about that. It's been a really different experience, even just writing book 2 in a cozy mystery series, because it is so different than writing romance. The things that I struggle with are really different than the things that I struggle with when I'm writing a romance. And it's more story stuff and less plot and character type stuff. Like, it's nitty gritty details type stuff. The actual mystery, the dropping in the red herrings and making sure the clues are all where they need to be. I've had to go back and fold things in. It kind of feels like baking in that way. Like, I've gotten the basic dough ready to go, and now I'm having to fold in some of the extra goodies. And then tomorrow, my writing day will be really wrapping everything up and setting the scene for the next book in the series, which will be Homicide at the Holidays. Charming, no? So it's been really fun, kind of living in a different world for a while. And then in the background, I have gotten the rights back to one of my standalones for Delancey, and I'm republishing that with a new cover and all new stuff this month. So I'm trying to keep the Delancey name alive and having new things coming out. That book was published by Love Swept, which is part of Random House, back in, I think, 2017. So at this point, I have a whole new reader audience that most likely has not read that book, or that's what I'm banking on. So we'll see what happens. I sold an audiobook standalone that I got the rights back to recently to Tantor. So there's a few Delancey things happening, but I do need to get back and write another hockey book. So that is definitely hanging over my head. It may or may not get out this year. Most likely it would be a January book, but we'll see what happens. Things have been moving at a fair clip, although we're approaching the holidays. So I think that's about all. Oh, there is one more thing to tell you about if you're interested at all. I don't know why you wouldn't be, because kittens are very cute and we have gotten one. And normally when I'm sitting in this seat in this office, this kitten, which is literally as big as my 2 hands, it's like just a couple handfuls, is sitting on my lap sleeping. And that's the only time he's quiet. The rest of the time, he literally never shuts up, to the point where I had to leave the house yesterday to work because, despite the fact that I have a home office that I love, I could get literally absolutely nothing with a lot of F words in front of it done because he is so noisy and constant, and I just kind of wanted to kill us both. So that's where my life is at this point. But I did not have the kitten when I interviewed Julia. So let's go ahead and listen to that. Thanks so much for joining me. And you know where to find me if you need coaching or editing. It's evidentinc.com. And I am Nancy. So let's get to the episode. So we are recording.
All right.
So we're here BSing today with Julia Jarrett. I'm so happy that you're here. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. What I would love is if you could kind of start us off by just telling us a little bit about who you are as an author and what you write.
I am who I am as an author.
Well, I mean, like,
not an easy question to answer.
I don't mean like existentially. I mean like.
I am a Canadian author of spicy romance, contemporary. I started, didn't really start with small town, but my focus was small town up until this year, where I was convinced to branch out into sports. And so now I'm releasing a baseball romance series. I live on the west coast of Canada, so all my books are set over here because another very famous Canadian author, Zoe York, inspired me to write books where I live. So I thought, why the heck not?
Yeah.
I'm also a full-time mom. I used to be a full-time hospital social worker, but I was able to leave that last year. Yeah, that's me.
All right. Have you always written romance? Did you start there?
I've always written romance, right back to when I was a teenager, and it was Hanson fan fiction.
Oh, you're kidding me. I didn't even know there was such a thing, like music fan fiction.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I say fan fiction, I'm talking a couple of my high school friends and I in the basement of her parents' house, typing it out on the old computer and printing it on the old printers that had the tear off edges.
Yeah, with the little holes.
Yeah. So I had forgotten that I had even written that until my mom reminded me when I first started publishing. She's like, well, you were always writing when you were a kid and as a teenager. But I drifted away from it when I sort of became an adult and went to university and got my degree and started working at the hospital. So I used to joke that the only writing I did was patient case files until I started writing this. But since then, it's always been romance.
Well, so at what point did you start writing again? You went into a completely different career. You're focused on all the adult things, having family, etc.
Mm-hmm. The long but short version is one of my sons has some special needs, and we hit a point in 2016-17 where we realized he needed me to be more present. So I stepped down from my full-time work and worked more casual part-time at the hospitals. But then when he was entering school in 2019, well, I was talking with my husband. We were camping that summer, and I was saying to him, like, what am I going to do when the kiddo goes to school? I'm going to be bored during the day. And at that point, I knew I didn't want to go back full time at the hospital. It was very emotionally draining work. I'm a really strong empath, and that work was just sucking the life out of me. So I knew I didn't want to go back to that full time. So it was, well, what am I going to do when he's in school 6 hours a day and I'm home? So my husband was joking, and he said, well, you read so many of those darn romance books. Why don't you write one? And we kind of laughed it off as like a funny joke around the campfire or whatever. But then a few weeks later, I think my kid had started school. I literally woke up in the middle of the night with this idea in my head and just could not fall back asleep. And so I got out of bed, went downstairs, grabbed my laptop, and just started writing down this idea that I had, which turned into my first book. So I published that in 2020. And I haven't, like, the joke, we say now that the joke's on my husband because, you know, little did he know that dare would turn into a career.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that is what I had hoped would happen to me, like that this idea would just take hold of me and then I'd go write the book. But it wasn't at all like that. Mine was more like I knew I wanted to write a book and I could not think of the idea. Right. Like I was like beat myself up, like it has to be really good, and so you can't write it until it's great. And
so that's probably the more logical way to go about it, because I made a lot of mistakes in the early days because I didn't know what I was doing at all. Like I did, once I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I found a couple online courses that the local university, they had sort of a distance school thing that they would put on about, you know, creative writing. Yeah. And I did that. And, but I had no idea what tropes were. I had no idea what genre expectations were. I had no idea how to market. You know, the concept of branding and social media presence and hooks and any of that, character arcs, like I had zero clue. Some of it came fairly instinctually. Like I had an author friend back in those early days that used to lament how easily story arcs came to me. Like they just flow from me fairly naturally. Yeah. And she hated that. I'm really jealous that you can just do that. But I didn't know what I was doing in so many ways. And so that first series, like it was probably the third or fourth book before I finally went, oh, maybe I should have this thing that they call a trope in there somewhere.
But I bet you did, because if you were reading romance for a while, then that's why it was instinctual, because you had the sense, I bet you did understand genre and reader expectations, whether you could articulate them or not.
Yes, I'm sure there was a base level understanding, but the end result was not spectacular. And those books are no longer available anywhere.
Okay. That was my next question.
No, they're also very different from how I write and what I write now. And they don't represent me as an author anymore. Like, I have the last copies up on my shelf, and that's where they will stay.
I have some books like that.
Yeah.
Well,
I think we all do.
where are you at this point? How many? You have a couple different series. You have a few. You have a million books. Where are we?
So people ask me this and they're like, how many books have you written? And I always have to qualify that by saying, do you mean how many stories or how many physical books?
Yeah.
Because it's a different answer.
Okay.
Because I've written a lot of, short stories for anthologies and newsletter builders and what have you. So whereas actual books that you can go to the store and buy right now is a different answer.
I think I'm looking for books you can go to the store and buy right now.
Okay. Then that right now is 6. I have to count. 6, 12, 14, 15, 18.
In 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you're fairly busy.
Yes.
Is what I mean.
I am an overachiever. Yes, I'm lucky that I've always been fairly fast at writing when I know what I'm writing, which is why I use plotting coaches and help with my outlines, because when I know that, then I can get my books done fairly quickly. They're also not super long. Like, I don't write 110,000 word beefs. So.
Yeah. Where are they? About 60, 70?
7. Yeah, I used to be more around the 60 mark. Now they're 70 to 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a sweet spot for romance right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's see. We kind of heard how you got started writing and where you started reading. So how do you, like, that first idea you said came to you in the middle of the night? Is that how it always works? Does the inspiration come in a dream, or where have the other ideas come from?
Everywhere. Like, I think that's the really cool thing about creative people, is that the inspiration can come from anywhere. Like, the baseball series is only happening because of 2 things. The first being my kids are obsessed with the Savannah Bananas baseball team. And so we've watched a lot of TikToks and we've gone to their games and we love them. But then also last summer, I was at Vancouver Canadians, which is like our local AAA team. I was at one of their games. And I jokingly, took a video of the field as they were warming up and posted it to my Instagram stories being like, ha ha ha, should I write a baseball series next? And the number of replies back that I got saying yes was like, oh, all right, well, why not? Let's try something new. I had written, by then I had actually done 3 small town series, because I also have a trilogy of novellas. And I was kind of ready for something a little bit different. So I thought, why not? So that's where that came from. And then in terms of the actual ideas, I am a talker. And so I get most of my ideas when I'm literally just sitting down and talking with someone intentionally about book stuff. And it's, okay, so here's book 1 and there's this person and this person. I'm not sure what they should do. What do you think? And that back and forth is what really sparks things for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of my business, right? And I think the reason that I started doing that with other authors is because I'm the same way. I need that. And the best sort of organic generation of stories seems to come when I have somebody to chat with about what I think the story might be.
Exactly.
And I realized in trying to get my own husband to play that role that a lot of people need to pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
You just don't have someone to do that.
No, he can't. I mean, the first series, the one that's not available anymore, that one happened right around the time one of my best friends was going through a not very pleasant divorce. And so she and her twin sister were over at my house a lot, because we were all just kind of supporting her through that. And a lot of those books were plotted sitting in my hot tub with glasses of wine at night with the 2 of them. And so, it comes from wherever, but I do definitely find I get the most when I'm talking back and forth with someone, and the idea is just, you throw out 90% of what you talk about, but that 10% that you keep is exactly what you need.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's always super exciting for me because when I'm helping someone talk through something,
Yeah.
I try to throw out a million ideas, but I can tell like when they get
Yeah.
the one that they're
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh.
Yeah. I mean, the I don't know when this is going to go live, so I have to be careful how much I say. But one of the elements of the book that you just helped me plot more recently came from a conversation with an author friend online, actually. And she's somebody that I haven't really talked a lot in detail with, but we were having this conversation because I was kind of stuck on what I needed another major element for this couple, and I could not figure out what that element was going to be. And then she randomly was like, well, what if this? And I went, ooh. And it's something I've never written before, never considered writing before, but it just fit. So I think that's the other piece is finding a coach or a plotting coach that you can work well with that can help pull that out is really key, but also being open to conversations with just about anybody because you never know when something's just going to strike.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. There was a time where I felt like I didn't want to tell people what I was writing. Like A, they might be bored, or B, maybe
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of stupid and I didn't want to hear
Mm-hmm.
that. But now I'm sort of like, I'll throw stuff out. And you're right, the things that you get back are sometimes like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. It's sometimes like we need to be pushed out of our comfort zones a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
that's, like I said, that's the one that you helped me with is outside my comfort zone in a couple of different ways. And I needed someone else to spark that idea to make me take the leap. And I'm so glad that I did because I think it's brilliant. But you need that push, right? And you never know where that push is going to come from. So
Well, so let's roll into process a little bit since we're kind of already touching on it. I know, and you have mentioned a couple times that you consult with a coach because I'm the coach, at least for a couple of books, which is fun for both of us, hopefully. But so at what point do you bring the coach in your plotting? And I assume that you are kind of a plotter based on our conversations.
Mhm.
And then where does it go from that point? Like how much outlining do you do? What's your kind of building the story process look like?
I have to caveat this by saying my process is still in development. And I think it probably always will be, right? Because what I did 2 books ago is different from what I did 5 books ago, is different from what I'll do in the next book. But where I'm at right now, sort of my sweet spot, is I come up with my basic idea. I want this person and this person to have this as their major trope, and this is going to be their big thing. And I sort of brainstorm notes, and I have multiple notebooks. Who doesn't? And
Yeah.
I just write down any random idea that comes to me for that couple. Then I'll sit down with my coach and be like, all right, verbal vomit, here's everything that I've come up with, and have that help in filling in the blanks and actually forming it into a story. I do like to have chapter by chapter outlines. So I've learned over the last couple years that my weak spot is always my character work. I know them up here, but in order to get them down on paper, I need to have more about them down on paper. And so that's a big piece that I have to work on is who are these people? What are their issues? What are their wounds? What are all of those pieces that we as authors know we need?
Mhm.
I definitely need the help to pull that out. But once I have that, I like to have a chapter by chapter breakdown. I don't need the entire thing done to be able to start. I find if I've got a good sort of first 60% and then I've got the dark moment in the ending, that sort of in between stuff will come to me eventually. Normally, as I'm writing, I'll start going, ooh, I need to add that in here and I need to add that in here. But I do like to know in each chapter whose point of view is it going to be, what's going to happen, what are some lines or some scenes or things that I would really love to capture in that. And then as soon as I have that outline, I go. It's often hard for me to hold myself back because I want to start writing so badly, but I know that I need to get to that point where I've got that outline or I get stalled and I get stuck. But as soon as I have that chapter by chapter, then it's let's go.
Yeah. Well, and then that's the part where you were sort of talking about how you know what you're going to write. So it just sort of happens pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I used to set myself, word count goals and everything like that. And I've recently switched from that to more of a chapter goal. So each day, am I going to write one chapter or two or more? And that seems to work pretty well because again, my chapter length has varied, where they used to be more like 2,000, 2,500 words. Now they're like 1,800 to 2,000. So typically I set myself, a regular day is just one chapter a day, because then there's everything else that still has to go. But I find I draft fairly clean, and so I just keep pushing through. And then once the rough draft is done, then I go back through and try to do a read through before I send it off to a couple alpha, beta readers, for some sort of developmental critiques and feedback, before it then goes to my editor, who does a couple of rounds, and then it goes to my proofreader. So,
yeah. And how much kind of, as you're writing, is there much iterative editing? Do you go back up and read a few chapters and then continue on?
No, because when I'm in drafting, I have to stay immersed in it. I can't write for 4 days and then take a week off. Like if and that's why I'm careful with how I schedule myself, because when I start drafting, I know I need to have 6 to 7 weeks where I can be writing 6 days a week. Because if I take more than a day off, I'm lost. And all the momentum and all the knowledge of what's happening, I lose. I think probably going back and doing those read-throughs is really beneficial because you remember what you've already done, because that does tend to trip me up when I'm then doing my read-throughs is, oh, wait, I already said that, or I already did that.
Wow, I always find things that surprise me, like, oh, I forgot I said that.
Yeah, so it probably would be a good habit to get into, but I'm a very fast reader, even when I read for pleasure. And so reading my own stuff, I have to really intentionally slow my brain down. Thank you, ADHD, to focus. And I don't like doing that every day because it then I get bogged down, right? I get bogged down in that read through and can't maintain the speed and the momentum of writing. So I prefer to just write it straight through and then take a few days and do a slow read through myself.
And do you actually write in like a Word doc, or do you use Scrivener? How do you do it?
I used to write in Word. I have recently been trying to get on board with Scrivener. It's not my favorite yet.
Yeah.
I like having everything all in one place, like having the outline and having the characters and having the notes, but it's not intuitive yet for me in terms of how to use it to its full potential. So I'm still working on it.
I think that what you said, the full potential part, is what a lot of authors don't even bother with. I know I probably have just touched the surface as far as capabilities.
Yeah.
I think it does a lot more stuff than I use it for. But
I think everybody uses different elements of it, right? So like I'll talk to, a friend of mine who loves it, and she's like, oh my gosh, I use this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah, there's like the cork board and there's color coding, and like I've tried using all of that stuff, but I don't really need it or want it. I like having each chapter in a separate little file, and I like having the notes on the side. So I can click through the chapters and be like, okay, that's Monday, that's Tuesday. Like timelines are really hard for me. And then also having like all the story notes down, in that thing on the left. That's all I've
been using it a lot also for like Scratchpad. Excuse me. So the notes section, I'll always put in a headline Scratchpad. And so when I'm writing, if there's something that I'm like, oh, I like that, but not here, I can just copy it, paste it in there, and then it's saved somewhere. So I don't lose it. And then it's also where if as I'm writing, I go, I know this chapter needs more X, I'll give myself a note, in big capital letters, needs more X. And then when I'm going back and doing my read through my first pass, that's where I'll go in and add more of that. Or, if I'm having a conversation with an author friend later on and they go, ooh, why don't you think about adding this and this? I'll go into that section and into where I think that's going to fit. And I'll just give myself a note for when I'm going back and doing that first pass.
Yeah. And then the really smart writers also keep like a marketing blurb sheet where like they'll pull out the quote that they know they're going to use in the TikTok or whatever.
I did do that for the one that you and I have worked on. I have to remember that it's there though, because I've never done that before. And so I have to remind myself, wait, you do have hooks and tropes and this, like you've
So
got
good. Yes. I used to be good at that. And I would always send them to Kelly, my PA, and be like,
yeah,
here's all the quotes. And she would make all the graphics.
yeah,
And it was that was smart. I should do that again.
right? Yeah, my friend Shell Sloan told me about doing that, and I was like, that's actually genius. But it's not, again, it's not intuitive for me to do that. And
Yeah.
I always say that, like, I've got the writing side of this down. The marketing is where I'm like, what? You mean I have to actually convince people to buy these now?
Right? Like, why don't they just want them? I spent all this time writing
Yeah,
them.
why can't you just do them and then they magically sell?
Yeah.
Doesn't work
Well,
that
I
way.
think that the magic author has both brains working at the same time. And I'm much more like you, I think, where like if I'm writing, I'm writing. And then
Mm-hmm.
later I'm like, oh, I should have been doing that. I should have done that. Like it would have made
Yeah, yeah,
marketing stuff so much
yeah.
easier.
It's really, yeah. This year I tried to do this last year. I didn't succeed quite as well, but like this summer, my kids are on summer break right now. And I consciously decided, like I set my schedule and everything, that for July and August, I was not going to be writing. I was going to be focusing on catching up on some of those admin tasks, marketing tasks, that kind of stuff that I've been putting off and haven't wanted to bother doing for so
Yeah.
long. And, but it's hard because that's the side of this that isn't fun for me. Like it's not, I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy doing ads. I don't like that. And so it's a bit of a drag to make myself sit down and do it.
Yep. I hear that.
Yeah.
Well, so are you KU or are you wide or are you somewhere in between?
I'm 95% KU now. So when I first started publishing, I went into KU because I thought, oh, that's just gonna be easy. And it was an epic flop. Now, the books weren't good and I didn't know how to market, but it still was it was not going well. And I had more ebook sales than I had page reads. And so a couple author friends that had kind of taken me under their wing because they'd been around a lot longer than I had recently gone wide, and they were like, Julia, you should really try it. Like, just give it a try. And so back in 2021, I think, I had just released my novella trilogy wide. No, sorry, into KU. And I was gearing up to release my first small town series, my big series. And I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's go wide. And so I went wide with a complete series, the one that's now not available, and the novella trilogy. So it did incredibly well for me. Like everybody says, going wide, slow build, it's going to take you a while. I had the opposite where it was instantaneous. I went from peanuts a day to peanuts a day. But I think it's because I had two series. So I was able to do a free first in series right off the bat. I was able to apply for all of the promos right off the bat. And I had people guiding me on, best practices and how to do it. And so for 3 years, I immersed myself in being wide. And I, learned from as many people as I could about what to do to make myself successful there with promos and book clubs and all the things. But then I hit kind of a ceiling where I had grown my newsletter, grown my social media, grown my following, but it always felt like something was missing the mark. My other wide author friends would talk about how they'd send a newsletter and see a huge bump in pre-orders. And I was like, I got nothing. And I just started to question whether it was because my audience was predominantly Amazon and Kindle Unlimited and not wide, despite thinking that I had grown a wide audience. Maybe I actually hadn't.
Yeah.
And so again, it was, some very wise authors that had said, well, why don't you just test it? Why don't you put your stuff in for 6 months and see what happens? And so it was this past year, February, that I decided, all right, let's pull my 2 small town series, flop them into KU and see what happens. And again, I got very lucky that it went very, very well. And, it was a good move. And so now my baseball series, I do wide pre-orders so that my wide readers can still grab the books. But then they go into KU and it's working well for me right now.
I like that strategy a lot. So when you say you plopped them into KU, is that literally all you did, or what did you orchestrate a whole kind of like big promotional, I don't even know what, to let people know that?
Nope. I
put them
sent
in there and they went.
Yep. I sent a few newsletters to my readers to say, hey, these are leaving wide, grab them now. Didn't really see any bump in sales, so I don't know that I necessarily needed to.
Yeah.
And then no, I just said, okay, on this day they're going into KU, and they went in, and then I did focus a lot on social media because they went in February and my baseball book didn't come out to April. So I had a good solid month where we pushed backlist on social media, and every single caption was now in KU in capital letters, and all over Facebook, all over Instagram, all over TikTok. I was doing my best to just say they're in KU, they're in KU, they're in KU. I had, my ARC team, I was like, tell your friends, tell anybody you know that all these books are now in KU.
Yeah.
I did, kind of experiment with Facebook ads, but ads have always been a big, scary black hole for me. So I never really wanted to spend a lot of money on them or anything like that. So I just kind of dabbled, trying to learn ads, not doing it very well. But really, I just plunked them in there. But again, because it was two complete series, one that fed into the other, the potential for read through was really good.
Yeah.
And I had one book in my Donnelly's series that had all the hot tropes of, hockey player and fake dating and all that, which had always done well on Reels and TikTok. And sure enough, as soon as we went into KU, that one went kablooey in terms of page reads, and I started getting the Kindle bonuses and everything. So it was the right move at the right time. And then releasing baseball when I did was the right move at the right time. So I've been very lucky with my timing, and I do say lucky because some of it was good planning and some of it was just pure dumb luck.
There's an element always, I think. Okay, but you have said a couple of words, and first you said you don't like marketing. You really don't like it, but then you talked about Reels and TikTok. And in my mind, for some reason, those are almost like on a whole other level of marketing. Like that's not buying a free Booksy promotion. That is like actively working on making videos, and
I pay somebody to do it for me.
Okay, and that was my question. But it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. She is. Yes, no, she is worth every flippin' penny that I pay her.
And did you find like an agency or an organization that does that, or you found one person that's really good at it and you're not sharing her name?
So again, luck. Both of my assistants I stumbled upon by chance. I have one who I call my brain, Carolina, who's starting to offer services for authors beyond just me, who runs my website, my newsletter, my organization, all the spreadsheets, everything to just keep me organized and moving forward. And she was a reader of mine and a bookstagrammer. And I just messaged her randomly when I was looking for an assistant. I was like, hey, would you ever consider doing this? I could use some help with marketing. And her response back was, LOL, I actually have my degree in marketing. And I was like, you're hired. So, her day job is email and web-based marketing. So she knows that industry and how to do it. So her sliding in to take over that side of things was very natural and seamless. And she is flipping brilliant at it. And then the assistant that runs my Instagram and my TikTok is a local. She lives about an hour from me. And again, she was a really big bookstagrammer and really big book talker. Like she's got big following. And when I was releasing the special edition covers of my Dogwood Cove series back in 2023, yes, 2023, I was messaging a few influencers to be like, hey, can I send you a copy? Would you be interested in reading this? That was back before you had to pay influencers. So I reached out to her and she got back to me and was like, yeah, I'd love to. I love local authors. Send me a copy. So I sent her one of them and she loved it. So I was like, well, can I send you a set of the special edition covers? Would you mind promoting them? She's like, absolutely. So I mailed her a set of the books. And again, she really enjoyed them. We ended up meeting for coffee just because she was like, I've never met an author in real life. So I was like, she was so cute. So, we met for coffee and we just got to talking. And I mean, she's young enough that I could be her mom, but we just really hit it off. And then it sort of, again, naturally migrated where she was like, well, I do Instagram for a few authors if you want a little bit of help with it or anything like that. And it started out as, yeah, sure. Like, why don't you help make my Instagram look pretty? Go for it. And then it was, how do you feel about helping me make TikToks? Because I hate doing TikTok and it's, just the bane of my existence. So she was like, well, sure, I'll give it a try. And it's just, again, sort of organically grown from there, where she now runs my TikTok and runs my Instagram, and I can just, go in there and reply to comments and engage with people, because I still do all the engagement. Because I think that's important for an author to be doing authentically. So I still go in and do all the engagement, but she does all the posting and I don't have to.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is lucky. All right.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot there that someone could take and run with in terms of reproducing your results.
I mean, both of them are taking on, well, actually, Jess, social media, she might be tapped out, but, I have referred other authors to them as well. Like, I'm not trying to hoard them to myself or anything like that. But definitely the combination of having that help has been key. Definitely. Yeah, I think having the completed series, both when I went wide and when I went into KU, that helped both times, because you've got a big well for readers to draw upon right away. It's not like you're saying, here's my first book, read that, and then there's nothing else for 6 months. It's here's 12 books for you, go to town.
Totally.
But then having them in the background helping me get things going is key.
Totally. Well, so okay, you have is the baseball series is partially out, or
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So what does a typical first book in series launch look like? Do you put more effort into that, or are you more of the mind of like, I'm just going to push these books out and market them after the fact, or how does that look?
Again, that's one of those things that is changing with every series as I learn what not to do and what to do. Mm-hmm. I made the mistake with both of my small town series where I didn't put really strong tropes up front. And I think that is key. And like, if anybody were to say, what is your one piece of advice? It would be put your strongest tropes first. Because that's the book that you want to market. And I didn't know that. So I didn't do that. So now marketing my book ones is tricky. With baseball, I knew I needed to hit it hard. So that's why it's the single dad, and it's the baseball star, and it's the secret relationship and the vacation fling. Like, it's all the catchy, there's the Jersey moments, there's the touch her and I moment. There's all those things that readers love, so that when I'm marketing it, I can really push it hard. Yeah. So definitely book one. With baseball, we had a really clear plan in terms of how we wanted to market it. Like, Carolina and Jess and I sat down over Zoom back in February or March. And we were like, okay, how are we going to do this? What are our dates? What are we going to hit hard? What do we want to hit on Instagram? What do we want to hit on TikTok? What do we want to hit in the newsletters? And we wrote out an entire marketing plan to launch that series. And it definitely paid off. 100%. Like, that first book did better than I even anticipated. Again, it was also timing, right? Baseball season starts in April, so I released the first book in April. So
baseball season goes on for a million years. Like, it's always baseball season, isn't it?
You got like April till October. but again, like, there's that transition, right? Where people kind of come off of hockey and are like, okay, the next sport is baseball. And I think that this year, especially with the Savannah Bananas and all that, we're seeing this huge surge of people interested in baseball. So it was, again, the right time for me to say, okay, I'm doing this. And it's, there's a lot of us that write baseball, but it's not as huge and flooded as, say, hockey romance. So I think that there's still room to sort of make a name for yourself in baseball romance. I mean, there's some that are very well known, but it's still, there's space, there's room.
The downfall there, my little idea grabbing brain is saying, yes, but if you make a name for yourself in baseball romance, then you have to keep writing baseball romance.
I have fallen into that trap already. This series was meant to be 3 books. Then I needed a short story for an anthology. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I'll like use that as my launch into the baseball, and I'll do like a little prequel. So there's 3.5 stories. Yeah. Then it was, oh shoot, but I really want to write about this guy. So there's 4 stories. And then I wrote book 1, and I wrote a picture that was never meant to get a book. Like, until I realized that I didn't have a book about a pitcher. And I thought, well, what is a baseball series without a book about the pitcher?
Yeah.
So suddenly now it's a 5-book series. So
Right.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, never say never as to whether I'll keep going after that. I want to go back to my small town roots for a little bit, but
Yeah.
there can be
All
more.
right. So strong planning ahead of launching book
Yes,
1 in a series, plus
absolutely.
super strong tropes in book 1.
Yes. Yeah.
Sounds like
I mean, I'm not a big ad spender. So like when I say a strong launch plan, it wasn't, I'm dedicating thousands of dollars to ads.
Mhm.
It was a very strong social media launch. And again, not sending out PR boxes because I don't have those kind of funds, not sending out paperback copies to everybody, but just a really strong presence in terms of what I was going to be posting, people that I would be collaborating with. So aligning myself with other baseball authors and making sure that I'm, in their lanes as well, and we're in each other's lanes. And then there's a lot that can be done just by watching the Facebook groups and looking for what people are requesting. What kind of recommendations do they want? And can you provide that?
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome
Mhm.
advice. All right. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit
Mhm.
and talk about sort of maintaining your author career. And I want to look at this through a couple different lenses. Number one, because I think you've mentioned a few times kind of your community and talking about this with an author friend or asking for
Mhm.
help here. How did you, especially because you're a sort of newer
Mhm.
author, how did you go about establishing that? Like, how did you know, first of all, I need to connect with other authors? And secondly, where did you find them?
I see that question asked a lot, and um, I feel for authors because this can be like a really isolating career if you don't have those connections. um, I think the number one thing is to be yourself and to be authentic. Like, this is who I am. This is me, right? I'm very open about my vulnerabilities. I'm very open about my flaws. I'm very open about my strengths. And I think that that shines through, that people can see that I am what you get. So when I connect with somebody, I'd like to think that they sense that in me. Some of my author friends, I do. I have a core group, and then, well, I have a couple of core groups that have then sort of spiraled outward, if you will.
Yeah.
Some of them we came together to do a paperback giveaway. That was all it was. It was 4 of us coming together to do a paperback giveaway. And
Just
then we
like
pulled it,
people that you sort of knew on Facebook or,
like, peripherally. It was, oh, hey, we're all releasing around the same time. Why don't we do a giveaway? And then we pulled in a 5th, and I mean, those women I talk to daily and have spoken to daily since 2021, probably. Like, we
yeah.
go way that no 2020. Anyways, I don't know. We go way back. Since the beginning. And then there's others that I've sort of, met through social media, and you just start messaging people and you realize you've got a lot in common, and away you go.
Yeah.
One of my nearest and dearest author friends, Roxy Noir, uh, we're only friends because I stalked her on Instagram. Because I read one of her books and I loved it. And it was like, oh my God, this book is incredible. And so I messaged her to say, I loved this book. This was amazing. And we somehow just got to talking, and we have very similar personalities. We like to joke that we have the same type of crazy. And next thing you know, like, I consider her one of my best friends. Like, we, again, talk daily. We have met in person several times. Like, she gets me, and she's one of those ones that has been in this business since like 2013, so knows infinitely more than I do. She'll tell you she doesn't, but she does. And so she's somebody that I look to for guidance, and she then introduced me to Vivian Wood and Teresa Lee, and other people that have been in this industry a long time, that have been more than generous with their time, their advice, their friendship, and you just form those connections.
Yeah,
So
I love that. I think it's this starting that is hard for newer authors.
it is. Yep.
Because
Yep.
I get that question too, and I honestly don't know how I know the people that I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes step back and I go, wait a minute, I'm friends with Aaron Nicholas. I used to read Aaron Nicholas's books.
Yeah.
Like there is that surreal moment sometimes, but I think also recognizing that we're all just people. Like, yes, we're authors and you might have been reading our books for the last 5 or 10 years, but we're also just people.
Well, and I mean, you're colleagues in an industry. So at some point you cross paths, whether it's
Yeah.
at a
Yeah,
signing or just online. And
exactly.
I think
Yeah.
you're right. If you're open and
Yes.
you're friendly, then,
Yes.
who isn't looking for a friend?
Yeah. But that's where I've noticed over time that it's that being authentic and being genuine piece. And, you know, I don't know how to say this next bit, but it, not being in it to get something out of it,
Yes.
right? Like
Not being friends
I
with someone because they can help you.
exactly. Like I am friends with some very successful authors. I'm not friends with them because they're successful. I'm not friends with them because I think their success is going to lift me up. I'm friends with them because I genuinely like them and we get along and we can give and take, right? So there is that back and forth in a friendship. And so I think that that's really key too is don't go looking for an author friend that you think can raise your career.
Yeah. I think that's crucial.
Go
You can
looking
smell
for an
that.
author friend just because you want an author friend.
Yeah.
Um, the downside, I think, though, is also finding people that you can be vulnerable with and be transparent with, both about your low points and about your high points. And I think that that's honestly the hardest part is finding the group of people that will celebrate with you when you are succeeding, even if they're not.
Yeah.
Because there's been a couple friendships that have fallen by the wayside because as I've seen success and they haven't handled that in a great way.
Yeah.
Um, that's the hard part, right? Is
That
finding
makes
the ones
sense.
that can commiserate with you and celebrate with you, and you can
Yeah.
do the same for them too.
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of the community side of maintaining a healthy career, and I think
Mhm.
that helps a lot in
Yeah.
terms of keeping our social lives somewhat active despite being in your own little house working on your own little things. Um, what do you do to kind of to maintain mindset, both
Mhm.
kind of psychologically, like self-helpy, and
Mhm.
also craft wise?
Mhm.
Do you listen to podcasts? Do you read books? Do you take courses? What do you do?
I can't listen to podcasts, unfortunately. I know we're recording one, but I can't listen to them. My brain can't focus on listening. I struggle with video courses as well. I take them, but I struggle with them.
Yeah.
I've done quite a bit of work on mindset over I'd say the last 2 years, because I recognized that I was falling into a bit of a why not me mindset. Why is that person succeeding? Why not me? What am I not doing? Why am I not good enough? And I didn't like that spiral. I have a history of mental illness, and I knew that that was not a good headspace to be in. And so I'm a lifelong believer in therapy. I have tried multiple different forms of therapy. I love therapy. Find yourself a therapist. But I do also think there's a lot of inner work that we can just do ourselves in terms of that positive framework. And so um, I am a practical believer in the power of manifestation and positive thinking and abundance and all that. And I say a practical believer because I think a lot of people go about it wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of people think if I say I'm going to have my dream house and $1 million, it should just happen.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And so I did a 12-week long mastermind last year with Carissa Andrews from Author Revolution. Highly recommend her.
Okay. Show notes.
Yeah. Authorrevolution.org is her thing.
Okay.
I will say this, and I say this with all respect to Carissa. She has some things that she supports and believes in that I don't, like AI and that kind of thing. So we keep that separate. But her work in abundance mindset, in manifestation, in creating an author career that you love, the way that she approaches that, and she partners with a hypnotherapist who's also an author, is, I think, a very grounded way to do it. Because basically, to drill it down into simple terms, the way they approach it is imagine and envision what you want for your career, and then be open to the opportunities to do the work to get there.
Yeah.
And it's that openness to the opportunities, right?
Well, on the mention of work, because
Huh?
I do get the sense that this whole abundance thing has become super trendy. And I hear a lot of people talking about how they really believe in it because it's been working for them. And I think that's fantastic. But I also always get this sense that they aren't talking about that work part. And
Exactly.
maybe they're doing it and not mentioning it. Maybe they're getting lucky somehow. But this belief that I can think of something, go to bed and wake up and have it is.
Yeah. Well, and I, not to sound jaded, but I also think that a lot of the people that put that out there in social media, they're doing that because they think that that's the work.
Yeah.
And it's not. And it's not. You know, there's a lot of people that mistakenly are led to believe, you know, if you think it, it will happen. And I don't believe that. I believe if you think it's possible, then you open yourself up again, like I said, to the opportunities to do the work to get there.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the takeaway that I really got from Carissa and Tammy was, you know, let go of the things that you can't control and accept that some sort of force in the universe will take on some of that. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen instantly. That doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. And that doesn't mean it's going to happen without you needing to do the steps to get there, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it can be easy. And I did find that. Like I signed up for her mastermind after doing a 1-hour free webinar that she and Tammy hosted. And it was just sort of touching on the basics of her approach to abundance mindset. And at the end of the webinar, Tammy led us in a hypnosis all on opening yourself to abundance. And I'm not joking that I did that hypnosis and I went in deep. And the next day I got a book club offer and I got another promo that got accepted and I got invited to a signing. And I, like, within a few days, all of these opportunities were presented to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did go, holy crap, I opened myself up to those opportunities instead of saying, well, I'm never going to get a book club and I'm never going to get invited to this and I'm never going to. I opened myself up to those possibilities and they came.
Yeah.
So I signed up to do the mastermind and for 12 weeks really immersed myself in the mindset of being open. And it's something that I've not always consistently maintained ever since that was last January. But I've done pretty well at maintaining that idea of just being open.
Yeah.
Right? Just be open to success. Believe that you deserve success. Believe that it will come to you. And then when the opportunities present themselves, you're much more willing to say yes.
Yeah, I like that. And then lastly, let's talk about physical health because we are unfortunately in a fairly sedentary career. So what do you do to get yourself up out of the chair? And
it's a struggle. It definitely absolutely is. I'm lucky that one of my kids still needs to be taken to school. I have one more year of him in elementary school. So I do get a bit of a walk in the morning and a bit of a walk in the afternoon to do that. But my physical health has been a lifelong struggle for me. I do have a couple of medical issues that make things a little bit more challenging. But I have finally, in the last, I'd say, year, really started to try and prioritize that. So prioritizing strength training and prioritizing, you know, movement, basically, just movement. It's not easy. I envy the authors that, you know, have the walking pads and can type while they walk or what have you. I can't do that. I have arthritis in my feet. I envy the authors that can dictate, so they can go out for a walk or they can sit on a spin bike and dictate. I envy them that. I can't dictate. So it's a conscious choice every single day to be like, hey, get your butt up and move.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. It's
but you're not alone in that struggle.
No, exactly. Yeah. I think but I agree that I think it's a really important thing. that we need to be aware of, because if you're not taking care of your body and your mind, no job is going to be successful.
Well, and especially when where you have to drive yourself through the work, there's no boss standing over you. There's no outside deadline coming in and demanding that you finish XYZ right now. So in order to maintain that type of, deliberative mindset, you have to keep everything else working so that it doesn't feel like a stressor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, do you have any parting words? Tell us what your next book coming out is and where people can find you online. And if you have any one little gem of wisdom that you didn't get to toss out, feel free, but no pressure.
Well, the next book is the one that you have helped me with. So it is my third baseball book. I can't say a lot about it because I'm not sure when this episode is gonna go live, and I haven't revealed the tropes for this book because they are tropes that I have never written before. So
is it on pre-order or anything?
It is on pre-order. It's called Catch Her Heart. It is on pre-order on all the platforms. So if you read on Kobo or Apple or Nook, you need to pre-order it because it will go into Kindle Unlimited on release. So we're working on that. I'm also working on getting the audiobooks for the first 3 baseballs done. So after this one comes out in October, we're going to pause and we're going to release the audios, and then we'll go back to the actual books with hopefully a simultaneous release with audio next spring.
Nice.
So we're still deep in baseball. So you can find me almost everywhere. I am on Instagram, I am on TikTok, I am on Facebook, obviously, because I have somebody doing it for me.
You are.
Oh, you know I am. Or my newsletter is probably the easiest way. I do send almost weekly, so that's where the best place to get updates and everything.
Do we look for juliajarrett.com to sign up?
authorjuliajarrett.com.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And then that's got all the information on all of my books, where you can find them, bonus content, newsletter. It's all there.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing some time today and sharing your mindset stuff, especially. That was super helpful.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here.
You can find story writing tips, tricks, coaching, and courses at our site, www.evidentinc.com. Get live feedback in our writing community at Facebook at facebook.com/Evident Inc. And find past episodes of Story Strategy at our YouTube channel. Story powers the world, and we can't wait to help you tell yours.